German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock and her Lithuanian counterpart Kęstutis Budrys arrived in Kyiv on April 1st, reaffirming their government's unwavering support for Ukraine in the face of Russia's ongoing war, Deutsche Welle reported. The German foreign minister stressed that Putin's initial plan to seize Kyiv and Ukraine as a whole within 3 days had not only failed, but had also dragged Russia into a grueling war of attrition that it could not win.
We as the German federal government, the vast majority in our country, will continue to stand up for our peace and freedom, and that means continuing to resolutely support Ukraine. We have provided an additional 3 billion euros in military aid, so that we can provide a total of 7 billion euros in German military support for Ukraine in 2025. Specifically, this means artillery, ammunition, additional Patriot missiles, and IRST systems. In addition, today we are providing a further 130 million euros in humanitarian aid and stabilization funds.
Budrys, meanwhile, reassured Ukraine that Lithuania will continue standing by their side in the fight for freedom and sovereignty. Lithuania supports a strong and resilient Kyiv to be part of the European Union, concluded the foreign minister in his X page.
Lithuania will never acknowledge and will never recognize any illegal occupation of Ukraine territory, and that is today, and that will be tomorrow, and also for the future.
Ukrainian defenders shot down over 4,000 aerial threats in March, reported the Ukrainian Air Force Command on Sunday. According to them, the anti-air units took down 1 Iskander-M ballistic missile, 25 Kh-101, and 8 Kalibr cruise missiles, over 2,000 Shahed type, 805 Recon, and almost 900 other types of Russian drones in the skies over Ukraine. Ukrainian aviation reportedly flew almost 600 sorties with over 400 Russian aerial targets successfully destroyed, including various command outposts, military headquarters, and supply lines. 1 person was killed and 5 others were injured after Russian forces carried out 5 airstrikes using guided aerial bombs on a frontline community in the Zaporizhzhia region on Monday. According to the regional governor Ivan Fedorov, rescuers recovered the body of a 66-year-old from the rubble of a destroyed home. The strike also left 3 women and 2 men injured. Russian troops targeted a residential area, damaging houses, an educational institution, an administrative building, and shops. Ukraine is the only country that can decide if and what foreign troops may be on its soil, believes the Polish foreign minister, Radoslaw Sikorski. Speaking before a meeting in Madrid, he underlined that the Kremlin leader has no right to dictate who may be in Ukraine.
If Ukraine requests security guarantees in the form of foreign presence, then the international community will decide what form that might take. What it certainly is not to be permitted is for Mr. Putin to dictate who may or may not be in Ukraine.
The 4th meeting of the Weimar Plus group took place in the Spanish capital on Monday, gathering the foreign ministers of Spain, France, Germany, Italy, Poland, and the UK, along with the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy and the European Commissioner for Defense. According to Reuters, all the parties agreed that they would increase their assistance to Ukraine while considering new sanctions against Russia to force it to agree to a ceasefire.
What we need is also Russia to agree to this ceasefire, to move on, to show goodwill by, giving back the Ukrainian children that have been deported to Russia or releasing the prisoners of war. Many things that they can show. So I think U.S. also has the role to put more pressure on Russia to stop this war.
Ukraine will work with the U.S. towards a mutually acceptable mineral deal, said the Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha on Tuesday while meeting with his Lithuanian counterpart in Kyiv. He noted that Washington and Kyiv have already had 1 round of consultations on the wording of the agreement, adding that the Ukrainian side is committed to reaching an agreement that would meet the national interests of both the United States and Ukraine.
We believe that the text of the agreement, which will provide for the further strengthening of the presence of powerful, large American business, is also a contribution to the security infrastructure of Ukraine. It is always important to strengthen the presence of American business in Ukraine. Therefore, this process will continue and we'll work with our American colleagues to reach a mutually acceptable text for signing.
Sabiha also pointed out that Russia has continued to hit Ukrainian energy infrastructure after a ceasefire on energy strikes was agreed in talks in Riyadh. In particular, Moscow troops damaged an energy facility in Kherson this morning, leaving 45,000 people without power. Ukraine will continue working to ensure Russia is held accountable for the war, stated President Zelenskyy. In his evening address, he stressed that Europe will not forget the moral lessons of this war, adding that the accountability for Moscow has to be tangible.
It cannot be allowed for Putin, other Russian criminals, and the Russian state itself to be absolved of responsibility. It is simply impossible to normalize what they did in Bucha, in Mariupol, and in so many other cities and villages.
Zelenskyy underlined that the Kremlin is openly ridiculing Western attempts to restore peace while intensifying its attacks on Ukraine. The Ukrainian president emphasized the importance of pressure on Russia, which must be strong enough to prevent it from expanding the war.
All the more so now as Moscow blatantly makes a mockery of our partners' efforts to advance a peace agenda with constant new drone attacks and relentless, brutal shelling. Only through pressure can this be ended and Russia forced into peace.
U.S. President Trump did not appreciate the Russian leader Putin's proposal to establish a United Nations-led interim administration in Ukraine. This was reported by State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce during a press briefing on March 31st.
Well, I think the president's comments speak for themselves. We do know that I think there was an idea from Russia about a temporary administration that was not appreciated by the president. Ukraine, I don't think I need to remind everyone, but it's a good reminder, is a constitutional democracy. Governance in Ukraine is determined by its constitution and the Ukrainian people. We are committed to the diplomacy necessary to achieve a full ceasefire and to bring the parties to the negotiating table for a final and lasting settlement. President Trump has made clear that Russia and Ukraine need to move to a full ceasefire now. None of that has changed.
Russia is planning to draft 160,000 military servicemen. The Kremlin leader Putin signed a decree for the spring conscription that will take place on April 1st till July 15th. According to the Moscow Times, this will be the largest conscription campaign in the last 14 years. Starting in 2024, citizens aged 18 to 30 can be called up to the military service. Before changes to the law, the upper limit was 27 years. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has already asked Ukrainian citizens who live on the temporarily occupied territories to avoid Russian conscription in any way possible. At the same time, in the case of forced mobilization and involvement in the war against Ukraine, the ministry calls on them to contact the I Want to Live project and voluntarily lay down their arms to the Ukrainian Defence Forces. The Ukrainian MFA stressed that Russia's conscription in the occupied territories grossly violates international law, calling on the international community to increase political and diplomatic sanctions and other forms of pressure on the Kremlin regime. Russian forces doubled their strikes on Kharkiv in March, reported the city mayor Ihor Terekhov on Tuesday. According to a report published by Terekhov on his social media, Moscow launched 42 strikes with 172 air alerts amounting to 5 per day. He stated that Russia has changed its tactics when targeting the city. After a wave of Shahed-type suicide drones fly into the city limits and hit residential areas, local businesses, and energy infrastructure, another group of aerial threats is prepared to take off and target the rescue workers at the scene, maximizing civilian casualties. Although cold and calculated, the mayor assures this terror won't be enough to break Ukrainian resilience and that the city will endure no matter what.